Hey everybody, so I have a bunch of lemon balm here that I'm going to show you guys how to tincture. This is fresh lemon balm that I harvested earlier, and I did a video of how to cultivate it and tend it in the wild and what its uses are and how to harvest it. So now I'm going to show you guys how to tincture it. When you tincture fresh plant matter, you always want to use 100% alcohol. Not always, there's some plants that there's an exception to that, but for most plants you want to use 100% alcohol. This will keep them from spoiling and molding, and you're going to pull water out of the plant that's going to reduce the overall alcohol content in the end. So there's two ways you can tincture lemon balm, fresh lemon balm. One way would be to get a jar and fill it, pack it down with your lemon balm, and pour alcohol over it until you've covered the whole plant matter. That would be the folk method of tincturing it. The other way would be to do the scientific method, which is the way I prefer to tincture my plants, because then I get a more consistent product or more consistent medicine from one batch to the next if I tincture the exact same amount of alcohol and plant matter every time. So I'm going to show you guys the scientific method. So I harvested about 100 grams of fresh lemon balm, and I'm only going to tincture half of that because I don't need a ton of tincture for what I want to do and what I want to use it for, but I'm only going to tincture half of that, and the other half I'm going to stick aside for using in another recipe. So we'll put that aside. So when I'm weighing things, I like to have in my kitchen a digital scale so I can weigh things out in grams, because when you tincture things, you're going to do it at using the scientific method. You're going to do it with by making a ratio between the grams of plant matter you have and the milliliters of alcohol or menstruum alcohol and water together that you have. So I like to use a digital scale to weigh that out. So after you've weighed out the amount of lemon balm that you want to use, or whatever fresh plant matter that you want to use for your tincture, I am going to mince this all up and cut it up. The reason why you want to cut this all up small is because it opens up the membranes of the plant and it makes it easier for the alcohol to extract all the yummy plant chemicals and plant goodness that makes up the medicine from the plant. So I want to cut it up some. So this is 50 grams. And with a fresh plant tincture, you want to use 100% alcohol, and you also want to do it at a 1-to-2 ratio. So what that means is for every gram of alcohol or a gram of plant matter that you have, you want to use 2 milliliters of your menstruum, which in this case, because it's fresh plant, is 100% alcohol. So you want to cut it all up. That's 50 grams. So we're going to want 100 milliliters of alcohol to cover this 50 grams. It's probably going to seem like a pretty dry tincture to begin with, but then it's going to extract all the water out of the plant matter, and it won't be that dry. So I think my pint jar is going to be enough. I'm going to cut this up, cut it a little bit more. It smells so good. I wish I could convey smell across a video, but it's super lemony, and it's making the kitchen smell rather fragrant right now. So I think that that's good. So now I've got all my plant matter. Hopefully it fits in this jar. I maybe should have gotten a quart jar. But I've got all my plant matter, and I'm going to stick it in this jar. Pack it down in this jar. I think a quart is gonna, or a pint is gonna be perfect. I'm gonna pack it down in the jar, and then I'm gonna measure out my alcohol. So I am using an organic cane, sugarcane alcohol, grain alcohol. Sometimes I use an organic corn. Right now, with everything that's going on in the world, it might be easier for you to find organic corn than cane, and also because of the time of year it is. But so I have a graduated cylinder that measures to 100 milliliters, and you can order these online anywhere. But I really like the graduated cylinder to measure my alcohol because it's very, very precise. And I have a silver funnel, and these are great. And to get it out of here without having to pour the big jar, because a lot of times you'll buy alcohol and split shipments of alcohol because of the cost with other people. But to get it out of the jar, and I use these a lot in medicine making, I use a 10 milliliter syringe like this, and you can buy these at the drugstore to give children medicine with, and sometimes at pet stores to give pets medicine with. So I use one of those to pull my 100 milliliters of alcohol out. I'm going to measure it in my graduated cylinder. Usually it's pretty spot on if I'm spot on with this thing. I like to use like actual pharmaceutical, let's splash some, equipment when I do things the scientific way. You can always do things the folk way if you don't have these types of things in your kitchen. A measuring cup works good too if you want to do it scientific, and do it by the milliliter. A regular kitchen measuring cup is pretty accurate, not quite as accurate as these things are. Speed up this process. So 50 grams of plant matter to 100 milliliters of straight 100 proof or 200 proof cane alcohol. I like to use organic alcohol for making medicines. If I can't find any organic alcohol or I don't have access to it, then I will use Everclear, but it's not my preference. I will use Everclear for certain body applications, and I use Everclear to sterilize things like my graduated cylinders or my jars before I use them. When you do fresh plant matter and you're tincturing it, it's really important to sterilize the jars beforehand, because there's always the chance of introducing bacteria when you do fresh plant matter, but that's also why you use 100% alcohol, and it reduces that risk. So there's 100 milliliters of alcohol, and I'm going to pour it over the plant, and then I'm going to seal this jar up, and I'm going to shake it really, really good. And you'll notice over the time that it sits that you'll end up having more alcohol pool at the bottom, even though it seems kind of dry right now, as it pulls liquid out of the plant over the next couple days. So you want to label this really good. You can see already that it's like, I don't know if you can see, my lighting is not that good. No, I don't think you can, but it's already turning, the alcohol has already turned a green tint, and this is going to make a nice, amazing green tincture when it's all said and done. But yeah, you can't see that, but it just like almost instantly. But you're going to pull water out of the plant with the alcohol, so there'll be more water in there. So with this, you want to let it sit for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks. You could try to let it sit longer for up to 4, but I would watch it for any type of bacterial growth. But you're going to let it sit for 2 weeks, and then you're going to press it, and I'll do another video when it's time to press it. So you also want to always make sure that you label the outside of your jars, because you will forget what's in them. You will forget what you're doing and what's in them. So always label the outside of your jars when you're done. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's how you make fresh lemon balm tincture. And when it's time to press it, I'll show you guys how much I ended up with. Have a good night.